the broad section of the county, even have programs that train to these skill sets. So kind of an issue. So, and we need to update as well. So we need to do both, and we can all work together to do this. And it takes some very, very intensive collaboration. And I'm not just talking about getting together and doing a meeting, because there is nothing more frustrating than being at just another meeting, saying some really cool things, see you later, great, it's been really real, and then just doing business as usual again. So with our efforts over this past year, we feel like we've been developing enough synergy in some key relationships to move some things forward. I'd love to be able to work with adult ed, and I am in so many ways. So thank you, Rosario, as your right center. North Valley Occupational Center, I love you. If there's anyone else here from NVOC, you are a great partner and providing really relative, effective, real-world training for our machinists and for the field of manufacturing. Thank you. So how we want to do this is we want to align around WIOA, and I know it's all alphabet soup, and the I does stand for innovation, not investment, innovation, although we do need to make an investment in innovation. So it's going to take the village and the community as a whole. And I hope that from today, and I did come in a little late, I apologize for that, is that we would come to understand more about who are the community engagers, who are the collaborators, what do you all do around career development, workforce development, and economic development, and how can I plug into you? And can I get your business card? And can we continue to work together? And can we develop some things that are really practical and realistic in what the employers are needing? Did I answer that question?
I think so. I think so. Ms. Sampson,
Anybody else have
anybody want to
any-
add to that on the panel? AJ?
Bring it on. Oh, okay, fine. I disagree.
Good when not like a rap group with one microphone here. The song would be all messed up. I think that's great, and I love what Tracy had to say. And you know, I'm always trying to put this in perspective because I'm an employer right now. I've got 3 openings right now. You know, so I can always think about it from needing to hire people for my company right now. And I think the biggest thing that has happened is that from a macroeconomic perspective, you guys, employers used to do what you're doing right now. Like employers used to basically be in charge of training. They used to train their own workers. IBM used to, going back in the day, IBM, Oracle, the McDonnell Douglas, all these companies used to have training programs. But what's happened is that over the past 20 years, employee tenure has dropped significantly. So employees who used to work 10, 20 years, retire at a company, they're now working 5 years. In fact, if I interview candidates and they're like at a company for more than 5 years, I'm like, what's wrong with you? That's the truth. So what's happened is, as an employer, I don't have an incentive to train that person because that person is gonna stay at my company for 2 to 5 years and they're gonna walk out the door and take those skills that I just gave them and take a $20,000 pay increase, right, from the next company. It's super competitive. The other thing is that employers right now are having a very hard time. It is what we call a job seeker market. I'm in, here in LA County with the unemployment rate's about 5, what is it, 5? Well, you've got those folks that are underemployed, and you've got a lot of people that are long-term unemployed, but the reality is for the skills that they're looking for, it's single digits, low single digits. You go to places like I'm in Wisconsin, and they're 3.3% unemployment, full employment. So the other biggest thing you guys can do, and I think the question was, how do we ensure that we're serving the demand side, is it's all about recruiting these days. It's all about delivering that job seeker and that result. If I'm an employer and I call you and I say, I've got 3 people, if I don't see a resume in 2 to 3 days, I'm on to the next. And that's the type of service. So how do you know you're serving an employer, and how do you know that the demand side being served well, is that they're coming back to you and you're making placements. If you're not measuring success by placements, that's success right there. How many people do we get in a job? And then number 2, and I tell this to agencies that are in very low unemployment markets, if you don't have people that are unemployed, you need to start taking people out of low, underemployed jobs and moving them up. So we've got to figure out how we get people that are working in a retail job, because retail sector is the fastest growing job sector, but it doesn't pay enough to pay rent in LA County, right? So we got to figure out, how do I take that person that's making 10, 12 bucks an hour, train them while they're still working, and get them into a $15, $20 an hour job. So it's not just the unemployed, it's the underemployed. But to measure success with employers is, did I make that placement?
I just want to add a couple of things to that. A couple of the employers that we work with still do have in-house training, more on the job, it's paid, but we do a bridge to get individuals into that entry-level position, and then we do a supervisor training to their incumbent workers to promote them into supervisory positions. So it's continually a career path to get the entry-level people into supervisors, which will continue to open up those entry-level positions for us. And another way to gauge your success is, are you saving the employer money? So for one of our employers, Metro to be exact, last year alone, we saved them $5 million in overtime and $4 million in staffing costs. So is that a way to gauge success? Definitely. So you're still getting your placements, you're meeting your goals for the city contracts, you're helping society, you're putting people into jobs, you're using your community college systems, they're getting their ADA and their seat time and their money, but your bottom line is you're really helping the employer at the end. And I think that needs to be the focus right now, is the end result is, how are we really helping the employers?
Rhonda, why don't you hang on to that, and we'll ask you, but I want to comment.
Set up.
Set up, because the question I have details two industries from Rhonda's opening remarks, but I want to comment on the bridge approach that Rhonda said. We are mostly, the Los Angeles Valley College with CCD, we're mostly doing the training for those bridges Rhonda talked about. The biggest challenge we had in establishing bridges with Metro and Baxter and Griffles and all those things is as Rhonda said, it's a bridge to their training. You got to convince, and this is the relationship with private sector, you got to convince them that we're not trying to take the trainers' jobs. A bridge to employment means that they go through the normal training. So we're trying to help. When we started Metro 10 years ago, we started Metro, we got a backlash a little bit because they thought we were trying to take over their training, which is totally untrue. We were trying to get an entry-level position to go to their training. That's all we were trying to do. So you got to make sure that you develop that relationship to understand that we're not trying to replace something they already have. It gets a little bit contentious. So Rhonda, what are the benefits of maintaining a decade-long relationship, as you talked about earlier, in identifying and developing a sector, especially transportation and biomed?
That's more than one question.
Another one after.
Well, the benefits are definitely getting to know your business, your employer. Communication is key. So the longer you have that relationship, the better communication you're going to have. And like some of the other panelists said, is it might start out at HR, but now we're dealing directly with the CAOs, the COOs, the CEOs, the presidents, and these are the people that can change the process. Metro is one of the employers that will take ex-offenders, and it depends on what it's case by case, but they're one of the largest employers in LA County, and they do work with that population. They also work with individuals who only have high school diplomas. You don't need a college degree. So the more that we build our relationship, you get to know the industry, their hiring needs, what their process is, and it's easier to change and adapt our curriculum based around the employer's need. Because the last thing we want to do is put someone in training and then they have a certificate after 6, 7 weeks or 6 months, and it no longer meets what the employer's looking for. So as the employer's needs change and technology changes, so does the curriculum, to make sure that we're constantly training individuals that as soon as they complete and graduate, they're guaranteed an interview. And, you know, Metro cannot guarantee that they're gonna have a job, but they will at least guarantee they have an interview. And from this model, we were just invited last week to Washington DC from the Department of Transportation. We also have a grant under the Federal Transportation Authority. There was, transit companies from all over the nation that were there. We were the only AJCC at that convening. So what does that say? That we're not reaching out to employers, they don't know who we are. They're starting to work with the community colleges, but the main thing that's still not connecting is how to customize our trainings to bridge the skill gap for what the employer needs. And that was the main topic of the entire event that day, is how do we recruit the right qualified candidates and make sure that they're suitable, not eligible under our WIOA requirements, but they're really suitable to be in these industries and these sectors. You know, not everyone, they say, oh, I have an SUV or I have an Escalade, I can drive. Try to get behind one of those buses and not take off a curb or a mirror, and it's not as easy as you think. So it's not for everybody, and Metro and some of the other transit companies will tell you it's a lifestyle. So when you're recruiting and meeting with these individuals, our approach is a little different. So the model that we take is, we'll, as the Work Source Center, and we use our educational, which happens to be Los Angeles Valley College, we go as a team, and we recruit together. We interview together, we assess together, and then at the end, we put a packet together and give it to Metro. We don't determine who goes into the training. Metro determines. After reviewing the documents that you guys have provided to us, I've looked at their H6, their employment history, their background, what their skill sets are. Do I believe once this person successfully completes this training, are they going to be a good fit for the Metro culture? And based on that model, we've been able to replicate to other transits. We're dealing with Long Beach, we've dealt with MV, we went as far as out to Riverside, Antelope Valley, and at Washington last week, you know, Denver was there, Pennsylvania. There was just transit companies that were amazed that we're doing this in LA. We're really ahead of ourselves. You guys really need to give yourselves a hand, because no one else is doing what LA is doing. We might think we're behind, but we're so far ahead of the rest of the country that they're not even having these conversations that we're having here today.
Thank you. I want to comment one thing on that, if I could, is I think one of the key things for the training provider, whether it be whoever the training provider is, I think it's got to be flexible. So the training that Rhonda talked about, it's changed dramatically over the 10 years, because it was a workforce development program that could change, be flexible. And I heard a term by Gerardo the other day on a phone call for this panel. Never heard that before. It's different than train and pray. I've never heard that before, but you train for a specific job, and it's customized and flexible enough to move on and adjust with the employer's adjustments. Anybody else want to comment on that one question that you wanted, mostly specifically transportation environment? Anything else? Okay. And one more point that Rhonda said, the best trainings that we've had, best partnerships we had, is when everything's transparent, meaning that nobody knows who the AJCC is, who works for who. If you're under what Rhonda said, one team that goes in, doesn't matter if you work for the college, the workforce center, anything you want, but you're a team. Nobody should know what your organization is as long as you're offering that service. I believe that. Okay, what kind of background or experience have your students had in some of these trainings? Roberto?
Our students are all displaced, dislocated workers. We have veterans And we also work with young adults, 18 to 24. So we have a varied background, work with a lot of folks from Iran, a lot of immigrants, limited English. We're seeing a lot of displaced, dislocated workers, primarily from the Latino community with very limited English and other skills. Hardworking folks, but getting them to consider training is somewhat challenging. Our current academies, we're recruiting individuals from all these sectors, folks that had warehouse backgrounds, jewelry making backgrounds, truck drivers, construction workers, you name it, we get it. Our job is to convince these folks that they're not looking into their next job, but they're looking into their next career. We're strong on careers. As a matter of fact, we should just change our name to Workforce and Career Training, right? Not just job training. So with working with folks with diverse backgrounds, education, and previous experiences, and different cultural backgrounds, it gets challenging. However, the main thing we're looking for is attitude. And that's what industry looks for as well. Folks that want to come in and learn. Learners. And there's a lot of people that are not learners that come through our programs. And I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. So it's the best folks that come out of our program did not necessarily have manufacturing backgrounds, but they're inquisitive and very motivated to better themselves. And those are things nobody can teach, really. So we get a group of folks that are motivated and inquisitive and ask a lot of questions and take notes. Our training, my teachers have a field day with it because we know we're going to get good results.
Any other comment on that? Other people?
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the sectors that Roberto was speaking. UAW and CCD are both two of the organizations in the city that have the sectors. So UAW has the manufacturing and CCD has the biomed. And the students to recruit all have to be dislocated workers or recently released veterans. And you would think, well, there's tons of those in LA. Well, yes, there are. But it goes back to, are they suitable? Do they have the background? Do they have the education? So for biomed, their CASA score has to be at least 10th grade in reading and 11th grade in math, because you're dealing with biology, chemistry, and science. So we have to go back and look at our adult education, our K through 12, and really see, what is really being taught to this generation, because the future is going to be biomed and healthcare. And a lot of the kids right now are just that's not their strong, academic subjects. There are a lot of schools that are starting STEM projects, and that's great. That's, a step in the right direction. But what are we doing for the adult system? You don't really hear about people saying, oh, I have a engineering class, or electronics or biology or chemistry. So we're getting hundreds of people coming to our orientations, and we can easily qualify them as a veteran or a dislocated worker. But when you really start going through the pre-screening and the assessment, they're just not able to pass all the qualifications. So I think that's something that we need to look at while we're here with education, and see how we can start looking at bridging those gaps as well.
Thank you. Recently in the biotech program that Rhonda talked about, the DOL grant and recently the NEG grant, I know we have some folks from LAUSD here. We just did a program where we trained 186 people over the course of a grant and placed 90% of them, but we had a dozen Reseda High School people complete a 14-unit skill certificate in biotech. And that was a great thing. Talk about customized training. Those people now, juniors and seniors in high school, have a career path that they could follow and makes their training or their education in the future. We didn't get them jobs. We didn't want to get them jobs, but I think that was a big success in that now they know what they want to do. Or maybe they don't know what they want. They decide not to do that. That's a success too, because they weren't going to waste their time. Okay. Talk about outreaching to employers and things like that. Are there better ways to outreach to employers using technologies? I know who's going to answer this first, because we heard it backwards. Using technologies instead of traditional email, phone calls, and cold calls.
I don't have anything to say about that. I wanted to, first before we got to that, there was something that just kind of along the lines of what Rhonda was talking about, and getting these kids into STEM. I have an office in San Francisco. I spend a lot of time there. I'm seeing the innovation that's coming out of Silicon Valley. You're talking about transportation jobs, and I think this is very interesting. I believe probably in the next 10 to 20 years, most transportation jobs will be eliminated. We are looking at a massive, you see Uber, you see Lyft, you see autonomous driving vehicles. Almost every major automaker has done deals now with these companies. They're basically building cars that don't need drivers. So I'm not trying to say this to scare you guys. It actually creates a lot of job security because you're going to have to train these folks. But the reality is that this is happening. I see this all the time. You see those Google cars driving around, and I'm looking forward to it because I get to sit in the backseat of my car and text and do that while the car drives me to where I need to go. But this is, from a workforce perspective, I really am hoping you guys are thinking about STEM because, they interviewed one of the VCs up in Silicon Valley and they said, what are your kids learning in school? And their kids are going to be learning artificial intelligence. That's what they're teaching these kids now. So I get concerned because, a lot of folks that aren't keeping their skills up are going to be unemployed because the jobs are being eliminated. And I think it's a short time frame. I think it's 5 to 10 years, we're going to start seeing automated cars down the freeway. 20 years, it's going to be 100%. So now that I've scared you guys of everything, but I think that was important. So how do we engage with employers? You were talking about cold calling. Who here has ever cold called before? Anybody been kicked out of a building for cold calling? I have. I know Frank has. I think both of us got kicked out at the same time. I think a couple things. Cold calling is completely dead. It's completely over. Cold calling doesn't work. What has happened now, especially in the past 10 years since the Great Recession, companies have basically all businesses and decision makers, they can access the same information that you can bring them. They can get that information on their iPhone and their tablet. So you're not giving them anything new. What's happening is employers are self-educating. They're going online, they're learning about what's out there, what are these programs. The key now is about creating awareness to employers about what you do. There's really 3 terms, and I can't go into all 3 of them, but I wanted to pick out 3 trends in marketing that I think are key. The first one is called inbound marketing. And I just want you guys to write this down and Google these when you go home. Google inbound marketing. And basically inbound marketing is how do I put information out there to the employers that I'm trying to reach that gets them interested to call me, okay? So I'm not calling them, they're calling me. Things like webinars, things like ebooks, things like putting out content, recording things like this, and then putting that out to employers and saying we're talking about this and getting their interest. The number 2 thing is social selling. How many folks here are on LinkedIn? Who heard that Microsoft just bought LinkedIn for $23 billion? Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big, big deal. And part of the reason, they're saying, well, they do it because it's a great product and everything, but it was interesting. I was looking at the quote from the CEO, Nadella, of Microsoft, and basically he said it helps them differentiate their CRM product, right? CRM, again, and for those of you who may not know, CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, right? So that was one. They wanted to expand their ability to reach customers. But the other thing that was interesting is he said, it helps us take our CRM into new spaces like human capital management, recruiting, learning, and talent management. They acquired LinkedIn as basically a workforce play. That they're realizing that network of having access to talent, cultivating, developing talent, is the most important thing that they can do, and they spent $23 billion to do it. So I think when you're looking at trying to reach out to employers, engaging with your networks, social selling, which means being online, being on LinkedIn, all of you should have 500 plus contacts on LinkedIn. And your first outreach to an employer should not be, hey, I'm AJ with Launchpad, or I'm with the Workforce Center, and I'd love to tell you about WIOA. Right? And they're going to be like, whoa, what did they just say? WIOA? It's going to be, hey, Roberto, I just met with Frank. We helped Frank hire 20, 30 people, and I'd really like to figure out how we can talk with you guys as well. And Frank specifically asked me to contact you. That is what it's all about, because Roberto here can do all the research on his own. He can learn about workforce development, but the relationship selling is basically where everything is at right now. It's the name of the game. So the three things I wanted to leave you guys with is, inbound marketing. I would encourage all of you. I'd love to hear about, for instance, with Goodwill. I'm a big fan of Goodwill, and the work that they do. Is how do we take that message of what Goodwill is doing and broadcast that to the employers? How do we do it via webinars? How do we do it via ebooks? Then the other part is social selling. How do we leverage that network that Tracy has or somebody else has to get those introductions? I think you talked about that. Everybody should be connecting with each other. And then the final thing here, that one of the items is what we call account-based marketing. When we're dealing with employers that have stigmas or preconceptions about folks who have high barrier populations, we got to figure out, we have to be strategic in looking at these employers. And number one, what employers can hire a lot of people from me? I should be focusing on large-scale employers right now. Number two, who are the buyers in those organizations? Is it HR? Is it the head of manufacturing? Is it the head of logistics? Is it the CEO? Do I need to get a hold of her? Every employer has basically a council of people that are going to make this decision. And for you to figure out how do you get in touch with all of those people and basically flip the switches on each one to get a yes from each one. So that's the other term, is account-based marketing. But I really stress everybody, it's not picking up the phone, it's not making the cold call anymore. It's about getting them aware of workforce development and then calling them at the right time, that they just heard that webinar, they just heard that ebook. I'll give you an example really quickly and I'll end here. I was having lunch with our partner Salesforce. We're one of their big customers. And it was interesting. I said, gosh, you guys always seem to call me when I'm on your website. Why do you guys do that? Like, are you psychic? And they go, AJ, here's the secret. Our CRM tells us when you're on our website. Wow. And every time you're on our website, especially depending on the topic, you're going to get a call from me. So now he knows that I block his call and he called me from another number. But we're good friends. But I call him back when I'm not busy. But that's where industry is at with technology. And I'm not saying you guys need to be there at today, but really starting to look at these different tools to get in front of businesses. And most importantly, I want you to get in front of the decision makers that can help you to get more training and more placements made. So.
Thank you, AJ. I want to leave, as I promised at the beginning, just a couple questions. If you have them, if you didn't hear the answers that you came here to get, or there's something else that is on your mind that maybe after hearing from this panelist, you might want to ask. So I'd like to leave a few minutes for questions from the audience. Something that we didn't touch upon. Yes, sir. Okay, could you stand up? And I can't drag this microphone there. So.
David Serrano, business service rep from Google. AJ, this is for you. How much does your CRM cost?
City of LA is one of our customers, so I probably shouldn't say that. Well, it ranges. The CRM can be as inexpensive as I believe it's like $50 per user per month, and it can go up from there, right? And it's a lot of different platforms. It is the question: how do you guys get access to these tools and technologies? Couple things: nonprofits. We can work with you. Salesforce will donate 10 licenses to nonprofits. I know Goodwill in some areas. I don't know if this chapter specifically is taking advantage of that. Doesn't mean everything's free, but there are those types of tools, to get access to the technology. Also, education organizations fall under that nonprofit umbrella, so we can work with you guys to get those tools. But I don't want to. I'm not here really to sell software. It's more how do you use these different tools. So you can get them really inexpensively, or you can get the, what the city of LA has done, the bigger, system to do that.
How long does the implementation take to put it into place?
6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Because what we do, we have an application on top of Salesforce that's specific for workforce. So there's a little bit of cost to that, and then it gets, we implement, 4 to 6 weeks. Bigger projects, we're going to be doing a big project in San Francisco that's going to take 6 months. It just depends on the size. Okay.
Thank you, AJ. Can I have another question? Thank you.
Hi, this is Saranda. I'm Candace Lee. I'm principal at West Valley Occupational. And I thought you said something very important, and that is that for the biomed field that they need 10th grade English, 11th grade math. And I think that's information that all of us principals at the adult schools need to have so that we can impress on our teachers that our students complete with that level, whether or not they have a diploma or not, if they want a job. So that's really important information. So I think communication between Wilshire Metro and many of the principals here would be very beneficial.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Hey, one more question? Well, if you can join me in thanking Tracy, Rhonda, Phil, Frank, AJ, Roberto. I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you for your participation, and I hope you walk away with at least a couple things you can implement with your organizations to make you more successful. Thank you.
Margo, just light me on fire. Come on.
Look, Randy.
Hey, now you're talking.